Hello, hello. How are you? Let's begin. I'm just trying to get everything set up so it looks square here. There we go. How are you tonight? I hope you like my new background. I had to do a little bit of work, but oh, it's so easy now. It's just like a curtain. I can pull it back and forth, and there's a curtain rod across. Whew. Okay, so we're going to talk to a very serious topic that may not resonate for all. So I ask you to take what resonates and leave the rest behind. This may resonate for you, or you may feel it a bit in your heart, but it might be for future. There's different waves going through right now, but this came up in a beautiful discussion this evening, and it's what I call in the live here, the call to initiation, rebuilding the Temple of Isis. Wow, that's a big one. So what exactly does that mean? Let's begin with the Temple of Isis. It's something that hasn't existed in free society for a very long time. It existed at the time of Jesus over 2,000 years ago. And then eventually it went into repression, hiding, suppression, whatever you want to call it. I know there are practitioners of the Temple of Isis in this world, but it's not a publicly acceptable place yet. So at that time, medicine was not quite the same thing. There was doctors, but it wasn't like pharmaceutical and prescribed and different things. There was a very holistic approach to our bodies and the energies and how they worked and how to move energy in those bodies and keep them free flowing so that we could be our full energetic self. The Temple of Isis was a literal temple space that had sacred spaces. It had high priestesses, it had priestesses, it had priests, high priests, etc. And basically, it was like a medical center of today. Basically, a good example, a soldier that went off to war for 10 years, they'd come back just completely in post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. I don't know if they had that term back then, but completely in trauma and not able to fit back into society, much like our soldiers and vets are now. At that time, they would go into a temple and work with sacred sexuality to heal and move trauma in their body and rapidly recover, get the tightness and the trapped energy in their nervous system, the traumatic bubbles that were in their body, which would cause sicknesses and disease and pain in their body, much like we're receiving now. And they would rapidly heal them. What we'll call initiates in the Temple of Isis, that's the people that worked in the temple, the priests, the priestesses, the high priestess, there was neophytes and others where they were going. Often young women and men would be selected early on in their life, and they'd be inducted into the temple. And they would learn from, much like medical doctors do, and they have interns and residents and all this kind of stuff. They would work through all the levels, and they would learn this as a fact of life. They'd be educated, they'd be taught all the practices of sacred sexuality. And sacred sexuality is not the way we've been described it in a lot of ways. There's a lot of meditation and practice and other things, and learning to be in your body first, grounding and starting to recognize what's your energy and what's outside energy. There's a lot of spiritual practice that was used and known far before anybody would be starting to practice sexuality or sexuality with a partner in any way, shape, or form. A lot of these things, they could be done on people. They'd be kind of like a Reiki master. They'd go in and move the ecstatic energy in a person's body. And it didn't have to be sexual, but it was a very medical-like practice. And only practitioners, people that have been healed, that have been initiated, were allowed to participate in these. And it's very different from the mangled up version that's going, that people are calling neo-tantra and tantra and sacred sexuality and all this kind of stuff. But none of the people, or a good majority of the people, aren't doing their work. You could get a certification in body work and touching a body, and if you hadn't done the work on yourself, you'll project your sexual traumas and shames on other people, and it's a very distorted facet in our world now. Everybody's like talking out against sacred sexuality and practitioners and all this kind of stuff, but none of them were initiated. None of them had the energetic and purification processes that are part of the temple process. So essentially, it's a very high calling. It's a calling where you have to have done all your shadow work. You have to have all your tools of spirituality. You have to have gone through the process of ascension to a point where you purified yourself. You've cleared out all your trauma, your dross, your shame, your guilt, your anything that basically distorted you. And basically the processes of initiation, I'll explain that in a minute, they would ascend you to the point that you connected with God, you connected with another, and then you came out and you were fully sovereign, but you still had your connections with God, and you still had connections with partners, and had the ability to fully merge with another person in the process of healing, and then extricate yourself afterwards so that you could not be carrying the detritus or the dross that came from an initiation of another person or a healing process with another person. So these abilities, these people that could do this work, have been pushed under the covers, and the whole idea of sexuality as a birthright to people has been taken from us from the minute we're born. It's like, oh, it's a dirty act. It's only for the church would say it was only for procreation, and it's not a holy thing, and you shouldn't do it, and you should never do it for yourself, and all these things. But it basically, over time, it repressed things. Now, if you want to know the truest example of the Temple of Isis, it's in the Bible. You can talk about it. They don't call it the Temple of Isis. So when Jesus went and met who's called Mary Magdalene at the fountain, or at the well, and he met her, and then she became a disciple or came along with them, it doesn't tell it in the Bible. They said Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. But Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. She was an initiate in the Temple of Isis, or a priestess. And she had basically learned to use her sacred sexuality to serve humanity, serve men in healing and in teaching them the sacred arts of, she taught it to Jesus, resurrection, moving through his energy, moving through the chakras, using your sexual energy, your power as a human being to express through your body for creation, miracles, all these things that Jesus is quoted for in the Bible. Now, if you want to talk even more interesting, you can Mother Mary, or Jesus's mother. Most people think she's like some kind of shepherd's daughter or something like that. No, she was very high-born. She was actually a high priestess in the Temple of Isis. And to give evidence of that, she had a virgin birth. She channeled the energy, the Bible says the angels did it or whatever, but she channeled the energy of God, of Source, to create a baby within herself without having a male partner to do that, or a virgin birth. That's a really powerful, hugely energetic thing. So in the Bible, the biggest story of sacred sexuality is actually in those two women. And they're very powerful women with very strong abilities to heal, create miracles, do all these things. And it's not talked about. It's repressed, and it's told as prostitution and other things, and it wasn't. There's a whole ton of other stories, like Jesus and Mary married, and they had children, and Jesus wandered the planet afterwards once he was resurrected, because he was an ascended master, and he was able to move out these energies, and he started to teach people, and there's stories across the planet of where this all fit. Now, this brings back to where we are now. There's a lot of young women and men, and you don't have to be young either. I'm sorry, a lot of new spiritual ascended people or awakened people are feeling called to these initiations within their relationships, within their marriages, or maybe wandering around having this feeling. I've spoken to many people that feel called to heal people through sacred sexual acts, and they don't know how to do it. Is that a real thing? What's wrong with me? All these kind of things. But these are the next level, the new incarnation of priests and priestesses that will bring back the Temple of Isis capabilities. And the Temple of Isis has the ability to accelerate the ascension process for people very quickly. We are not meant to heal our traumas through pain and suffering and going to psychologists and taking pills and drugs. There's processes of moving energy through our body, getting us back in touch with our body, getting grounded, flushing our systems, using our own personal sexuality without even being with another person, but teaching ourselves to be sensual, to feel touch, to be in our body, and then start to move our energy. And once we move our energy and use our orgasmicness as a person, our pleasure, our brain starts to feed out all these beautiful medicines that we don't have to go to a doctor for or have a prescription for. You can get DMT, which is the spirit molecule with an orgasm. You can get serotonin, oxytocin, all the beautiful things that people are lacking right now, and exactly the amount our body needs. So the process of the Temple of Isis would teach people to get back into their body, get back into comfort with their sexuality, release their shame, release their traumas. And as people felt called, certain people are going to feel called to go to the level where they're a healer in this process. They're a person that can be a guide of a person through this process, to teach them, to sit with them, to carry them through, or to do things like initiate them. So when I talk about initiate, there's a call to a higher purification of self. And like I said, a priest or a priestess in the Temple of Isis had to purify themselves. They had to do all their shadow work. They had to do all their ascension work, and they had to find the highest level of purity, integrity, etc., in themselves before they could ever work with another person or touch a person or anything like that. Nowhere near what's being called sacred sexuality now. But there's certain people that are being called into these. They have people that are coming into their life that they trust implicitly. Maybe it's their partner or their husband, but they're feeling kind of drawn to work in this other way, but they're waiting for something and they're not sure what that is. Well, the initiation process is coming to them. There's people that are in your life that you maybe trust implicitly or feel hold a really strong container, but maybe they're not feeling like your partner anymore. And there's a magical thing starting to happen. And I want people to be aware of it so they can make their own choice. And some people, it's just going to hit them in the heart, and they're going to say, holy shit, this is what I'm waiting for. And then they'll know what to ask for, and they'll set intentions for it, and it'll start to come in. But a lot of us have either brought a partner in that's ready to initiate us. So that's a very deep sexual experience. It doesn't have to be intercourse, but it's one where deep levels of orgasm are brought up for each of the people. And in the first level of initiation, that either the male partner or the female partner with the opposite holding space for them. And these people will bring them to a level of sexual explosiveness. And we can talk about some of the tools, the fire breath orgasm, moving the energies up our chakras to the point that that partner who's ready to be initiated will receive their orgasm, but they'll smash into a million pieces. And this can be a very scary thing. But meanwhile, the partner is holding a crucible. And that crucible is that stone bowl that in alchemy they use to superheat gold to purify it. And it'll sit there and bubble and bubble. Well, this happens to us in our bodies. We literally smash ourselves, all our labels, all our beliefs, all our thoughts. This isn't a death, it's a purification. And all these things bubble up. And over time, there's a ton of emotions that are received. The person that's holding space is sitting gently, holding and responding to this person and watching over them and keeping them safe and giving them all the needs that they have while they percolate and they boil. And this stuff releases from their system. And it feels very uncomfortable. It feels very like everything's coming up all at once. But at the end of the process, this person holding the space, everything cools off. And if you've ever seen one of those videos where they make a gold bar, the gold bar is pulled out and there's a big chunk of black stuff on the top. That's called dross. Well, they basically just take a hammer and go ting, 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 and then that dross breaks off. And then there's a beautiful 99% beautiful gold bar. This is what happens to our system as we're initiating ourselves. The dross, which was our trauma and our old pain and our wounds and our stories, is shed away now. We had massive pleasure. We had huge expenditures of emotion and in a held space with a partner, and we purified ourselves. And then we do that same thing for our opposite partner. And then that partner does the exact same thing. And then there's two people that are their first levels of initiation. And then the final level of initiation, the Temple of Isis. So some of this is talked in the Magdalene manuscript book. Some of it they say is beyond what they could teach here because we weren't ready, but it talks about filling the light body and moving our orgasmic energy up our light body so that we can start to percolate. And there's all these alchemical reactions that happen in the body when a masculine and a feminine come together. There's magnetic and electrical currents and surges that go through the body, the lingam, the yoni, as this is all happening. And when we go to that last level of initiation, the final, where two come together in absolute orgasmic bliss, the same thing happens again. All of a sudden, both partners, without an outside crucible, are joined together. And all this energy expresses through them. They're fully merged, and then they merge up to God, and the whole energy and the whole thing happens. It's blissful. It's amazing. The last bits of purification happen. And then you've been indoctrinated in the arts to be able to, as you finish, you separate and you become fully sovereign. And being connected to our God source and that part, and then the full sovereignty. So we're still not connected. We're not attached like we used to with all these things. We come out and we're fully purified and we're ready to hold space for anything. We can merge with anyone. We can shift with anyone. We can do all these things that we never knew we could do before. And now we're fully initiated into that priest and priestess role. And these roles aren't taken lightly. Once you take them, that's a life calling. You are now working with people at a sexual level, working with their bodies, working with their spirit, their soul, their own initiations moving forward. You're teaching partners to do this work together. You're now going off to your four corners of the earth and you're initiating more people until the Temple of Isis returns. And it's a calling. It's a long, long calling to be able to go and bring back to the planet the birthright of our sacred sexuality. And it's not the sacred sexuality we've been talking about in neo-tantra, and it's all mangled up and full of people violating boundaries and all this kind of stuff. Once you're purified, none of these things happen. There is no certification. There is no whatever. It's not required. It's not proving to someone. It's going to this deep, deep level and coming out the other side a fully purified and sovereign being. And this is so sacred because once you have this, you have the ability in your vibration, in all you teach, in everything that you do to bring people rapidly through their awakening and teaching them to let go of shame and letting them know the secrets of sexuality. How do you ground yourself? How do you feel good in your body? How do you move your energy? How do you use that energy to create? It's not even sexuality at that point. It's a way of living where you're living orgasmically in the world. So running in pleasure without any sexual arousal or other things, just this constant current of your life force energy coursing through you, the source energy. You're now fully connected to it. You're able to express it. You're able to bring it into the world. So there's people that are feeling this. There are people that are feeling called to do this. Some don't have partners. Some do have partners, but it's this need and they don't know what it means. And there's deeply in their shame around and guilt around sexuality because this has been done so deeply across the planet. So they're lost. They're concerned that there's something wrong with them. But what we're trying to do is build a community where this thing is normal and we can start to allow people to explore this and to start to rebuild these places where people can come. Can you imagine a place where people come with trauma and they've struggled with it for years, or they don't know how to get through it? It's deeply in their shadow, and there's so much pain and so much suffering, and their bodies are all racked, and there's disease and pain and suffering going on. And to work through these things, take some lessons, learn to move the body, the energy in their body first, because none of this happens until you've kind of learned those initial lessons. Once you learn to move all that kind of stuff, then you can go in for a session very deeply, energetic, maybe only, maybe sexual, maybe that orgasmic initiation we were talking about, where you are held in moving through and ascending very rapidly. And it's not skipping any steps. It's the way it was meant to be. But the steps, with so much shame and guilt around sexuality, have been distorted, and now people are having to figure it out on themselves. And how do you share a sexual experience for purity and whatever when it's all dark and I'm worried about an STD and I'm using a condom and all these things which insulates us and keeps us from sharing energy, and none of these energies can move through us. So this initiation is not something that's taken lightly. It's not something that's dirty or shameful. It's something that we all need, and it's something that is coming into certain people right now. So I want you to know, don't be ashamed. This is normal. This is happening to me. I've met probably 50 or 60 different people that talk at some level of feeling this. And some of the people that are in our sexual services industries already are feeling this, but they don't have the tools. They don't have the initiations. They're stuck in money. They're stuck in like the trauma of that industry. So to purify all this stuff, to bring this sacred sexuality back, and then to teach a safe space for exploring edges, exploring our traumas, etc., using sacred sexuality is going to be hugely powerful in the coming days and months. So if this is something that is calling to you, feel free to just look me up. It's not any cost or anything like that. Just send me a message. We'll talk. I'll explain what I explained. But some of the people that I talk to, when they hear this, it's just like, oh, wow, what was that? I didn't know that. I thought I was on a different path or whatever. But when you hear this, and not everybody's going to hear it and like it, or think it's a good thing, or maybe their religious repression is going to come, but some people are going to hear this and they're going to say, that's what I'm here for. And that's what I'm here for. I'll tell you right now. And we're rebuilding the initiations. We're doing all these things as we speak. Some of them are being put together from past knowledge and past life experience and all this kind of stuff, because there's no book on this stuff. It's all been blown away for many, many thousands of years. So if this resonates, let's start talking. And if enough people are interested, we'll start doing some lives on it. We'll do a separate group or whatever. And let's get talking about this. Let's feel it. Let's hear from everybody's experience and everybody's feelings and this kind of stuff. Let's rebuild this. I don't think I got all the keys, but I know some of the key steps. And once we get the people that are needed for this, this is going to go very, very rapidly. There's going to be temples all across the world, and it's going to be needed. And there's tons of people that are already initiated and tons of people in other groups, but I'm just one of them. And the people that are called to me, I'm going to pull it all together, and we're going to meet with those other groups as we grow, and it's all going to become one again. So rebuilding the Temple of Isis, it needs to happen. It's critical for the world, because we got to get our sacred sexuality back. We got to get our birthrights back and get people unashamed and unguilted of their sexuality and their personal sexuality, so they can get their creation energy back, and then they'll rapidly ascend. Like, I don't know why people would go to psychologists and all these kind of things. No wonder it was so repressed, because it was so successful. Once we get the body regularly having orgasmicness and pleasure, everything naturally falls into place. Weight drops off the body, trauma falls away. Yeah, we get comfortable with expressing our emotions and other things. We start building community around that, where people talk about it and express their stories and all this kind of stuff. Very rapidly, the world changes. And that's what this is all about. So I love you all. I hope this helps. And if you got any questions, like I said, private message me or put a note in the bottom of this, and happy to talk to anybody. Have a great night. Thank you all. See you soon.